Some people think power is loud. They think strength means speaking first, speaking fast, and speaking over others. But sometimes, the loudest voices are hiding the weakest foundations. He worked in a place where confidence was measured by volume. Meetings were rarely calm. Ideas were not discussed. They were competed over. The loudest person usually won. The fastest response was considered the smartest. And silence was often mistaken for insecurity. He wasn't like that. He preferred to listen, to observe, to understand before reacting. But in that environment, his quiet nature slowly began to feel like a flaw. One afternoon, during a team discussion, he shared an idea. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't bold. It was thoughtful. Before he could finish, someone interrupted. "That won't work." The voice was firm, confident, final. A few heads nodded. The conversation moved on, as if his words had barely existed. He felt it immediately, that familiar tightening in his chest, the urge to defend himself, to prove he had thought it through, to push back louder this time. But he didn't. He leaned back slightly and listened. The loud colleague continued speaking, fast, assertive, dominating the room. He noticed something most others missed. There was no depth, just speed. The argument sounded strong, but it lacked detail. It lacked patience. He realized something in that moment. Noise often creates the illusion of certainty. Music. Later that day, the same colleague approached him privately. "You need to speak up more," he said. "If you don't push your ideas, people won't take you seriously." He nodded politely. But inside, he questioned something deeper. Was speaking louder the same as being right? Was reacting faster the same as thinking clearly? He started observing more carefully. In every meeting, the loudest voices filled the room quickly. They reacted instantly to every suggestion. They defended themselves before anyone even criticized them. It looked like confidence, but it felt like fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being overlooked. Fear of silence itself. And that's when he began to understand something subtle but powerful. Silence makes insecure people uncomfortable. Music. The next week, a major project discussion began. Tension was high. Deadlines were close. Opinions were strong. As expected, the loud colleague took control of the conversation. He dismissed concerns quickly. He interrupted others. He spoke as if certainty alone could solve complexity. This time, instead of withdrawing, he chose something different. He stayed silent, but not passive. He listened carefully, took notes, watched patterns. When the room finally paused, when the loud voice had run out of immediate words, he spoke calmly. Not long, not emotional, just clear. He asked one simple question. How would this plan handle unexpected delays? The room grew quiet. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't aggressive. It was thoughtful. The loud colleague responded quickly, but his answer felt rushed, vague. He didn't argue. He asked another question, calmly. What happens if the budget shifts mid-project? Again, a fast answer. Again, shallow. The room's energy shifted slowly. Not dramatically, but noticeably. People started thinking instead of reacting. Silence had created space. And in that space, clarity began to form. Music. After the meeting, something changed, not loudly, not publicly, but subtly. Colleagues began asking for his input more often. They valued his perspective because it felt measured, reliable, calm. Meanwhile, the loud colleague became more restless, more defensive. His volume increased slightly, as if trying to reclaim control. But the room no longer responded the same way, because once people see depth, noise feels hollow. He realized something important. Silence does not weaken loud people. It exposes them. When you refuse to compete at the level of volume, you force the conversation into depth. And depth reveals what noise tries to hide. Music. This lesson followed him beyond the workplace, in arguments with friends, in disagreements with family, even in moments of personal doubt. He noticed how often people react instantly, not because they are certain, but because they are afraid of appearing uncertain. We live in a world that rewards speed, immediate replies, strong opinions, quick reactions. But wisdom often requires pause, and pause requires comfort with silence. The fear of silence is really the fear of reflection. When you stay quiet, you are forced to think, to consider, to examine your own position. Not everyone wants that. That's why silence can feel powerful. It removes distraction. It removes performance. It removes the illusion of control. And what remains is truth. Music. Over time, he became less concerned with being heard first. He focused on being heard clearly. He stopped measuring his value by how often he spoke. He measured it by the weight of his words. And something interesting happened. He felt calmer, less reactive, more steady. He realized that silence is not about suppressing yourself. It is about choosing the right moment. It is about speaking when it adds value, not when it fills space. And when you do that, the loudest people often become quieter. Not because you defeated them, but because they no longer feel the need to compete. Music. If you've ever felt overshadowed by louder personalities, you're not alone. It can feel frustrating. It can make you question your confidence. It can create the fear that silence equals weakness. But silence, when intentional, is strength. It shows restraint. It shows awareness. It shows emotional control. The loudest people often break under their own noise. They exhaust themselves trying to dominate every space. But the quiet observer endures, because clarity lasts longer than volume. The next time someone tries to overpower a conversation, resist the urge to match their energy. Pause, listen, and when the moment is right, speak with intention. You may find that silence does more than defend you. It reveals the truth. Music. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever felt underestimated because you weren't the loudest person in the room? If this message gave you clarity, gently like the video so others can discover it too. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else feel understood. And if someone in your life needs this reminder, consider sharing this story with them. Sometimes the strongest voice is the one that waits.